Okay, so I mean, I think the two things that we want to do tonight is to talk a little bit about any sort of process procedures for the meeting on the 26th and the 27th. We have the senators coming on the 26th, the assembly members on the 27th. All 8 of them have confirmed. So Blankenbush, Buttonshine, Smullen, Salka, Miller, Griffo, Oberacker, May, and Tedesto. They've all, agreed that they're coming. They have it on their schedule. Griffo, I guess Griffo's mother is pretty ill, so that might be an issue. But everybody is there for that. I do want to kind of throw out a bomb right in the beginning. John Solka has Doug Guston and I met with him earlier in the year, during the summertime. We met with him and we asked him about mask mandates. And he is anti-mask mandates for schools. He's been going to rallies, telling people he doesn't approve of mask mandates for schools. In my opinion, spreading a lot of misinformation. So the question is, how do we want to handle that? These have always been events that we've been very courteous, respectful, not a lot of conflict. And but how do we want to handle that particular issue? Masks are not part of our position paper. Do we want to just leave it alone, or do we want to call them out, or what are people's feelings about that?
I think you use what the governor and Betty Rosa just stated last week, where somebody down south, it was a county executive.
It was a Nassau County executive who was just starting his position right after he was sworn in as part of his thank you speech. Yes, Robert, you're right.
I mean, I think you take that position and say, the head of the department and the head of the state both agreed that this isn't even something that's on the school board's radar. That's not in our wheelhouse.
Well, do we even bring it up? Because like I said, it's not part of the position paper. We could just ignore it and leave it go, or we could make it part of the, make it part of the point, or make a statement about it, or ask a question about it, or we just leave it alone.
I think if we bring it up, it's going to turn into quite a discussion. And do we want to go down that road and spend so much time on something that really we have no jurisdiction over? I mean, John is what? He's a retired respiratory therapist. I'm sure he's going to have an awful lot to say. If we open that discussion up, it could dominate an awful lot of time to really know results for us.
Well, I was driving around before Christmas. I was driving around out in Waterville, and I saw there were quite a few lawn signs out in Russ's area. Unmask our kids, blah, 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 that stuff. And I'm sure a lot of that's from him. So I did email Russ. He said he was going to try and be here tonight. His position was we shouldn't bring it up. Just leave it go. It's not worth rocking the boat. But I just wanted to kind of bring that up to everybody and see if anybody had any strong feelings about that.
Yeah, I would not bring up masks per se, but I'd like to know from all of them what they support as far as the safety for our students, which could cover everything from school safety resource officers to masks. So just general safety.
I think as long as you do that, that's fine, but you have to put a tremendous time restraint and stick right on it, so that you might allow them a little leeway, but their leeway is only going to buy them 2 or 3 minutes.
That's true.
Well, and remember, in the past, what we've done is we've given each person, 3 minutes to respond. There's been a question, and then, so we've had time frames, and that hasn't been a problem in the past. But I can see people getting riled up about that, and and I know Brian Miller has a very, very different opinion about that, and about safety, and so Joe, if you want a specific question, bring it up. But I'm just kind of bringing.
Yeah, but I don't want to get, like everybody said, I don't want to get into a long-winded discussion about it. I guess I'm just thinking of Safety for our students in general, you know, because, you know, it's not only COVID that's potentially putting, I almost said potentially putting our students in danger, but, you know, we hear so much about violence and
Sure.
whatever, that just, you know, what do they support, or what kind of legislation they support? You know, and would funds be available, of course, you know. But again, I don't want to get into a 2-hour discussion about it.
No, agreed. Okay.
Now, remember, this will be a Zoom presentation, right? We're not going live. It's going to be, you know, again, we will get this week. Charlie will send out the invite and the Zoom invite to everybody. So
I think the format that we used last year when it was Zoom is we asked a question and then allowed, because in the one for the senators, we'll have 3 people, and for the assemblyman, we'll have 4. And I think we just kind of let everybody answer the question. We threw the question out, and
yeah, we did.
We may have given it to a particular person, but then we just gave them, and I think we just kind of asked them to keep it to 2 or 3 minutes. I don't believe that was a problem, really. They were pretty succinct about it. I don't recall that we had any problems last year with it. But,
it was great. I mean, Tommy, it was great last year. You know, everybody respected that the commitment, and
so everybody liked the part last year. Everybody that was able to attend. Actually, the last 2 years, I think we've had it Zoom, and we haven't had it as structured as much. And so board members ask questions or make statements, and then let them respond to those statements. And we just ask them to keep their comments to about 2 minutes.
And I think it was helpful also last year to not have, you know, the whole group, to break it down to one night's the assembly and one night's the Senate. I think that also helped narrow down. And also when you kind of challenge them to say, you know, are you on board with this? Is, you know, presumably they all are per subject, but it put everybody who would be voting on it in their respective house right in front of you. I think that was helpful.
I think we had conversations, which was good, with the audience members and the legislators. And so there was more of a conversation, a give and take that happened. Good. Okay. Any other comments about format? So we'll kind of keep the same format as last time. Let them make an opening statement, give them 2 minutes to make an opening statement. And then we'll start asking questions and ask them to limit to about 2 minutes. But if they go over a little bit, it's not such a big deal. And just ask questions. Let me see, how long do we have for this? 2 hours.
Yeah, typically, Tom, we start at 6:30 and we run to about 8:15.
Yeah, I think this year we've told them 6 to 8, and then we start the registration at 5:30. Is
right. You're right, Tom. Yeah, I'm sorry. With Zoom we do. So yeah, so 6 to, you know, and again, it's like last year, I think, Tom. Once we get to the, you know, to the end of the main questioning, you kind of wrap it up with them. So
okay. Any questions about format? Comments about format? Go ahead.
Jim or Tom, with things that have changed with redistricting, is that something we want to talk about or ask about, how that's going to affect some of these locations that may have a different representative than they have now? Is that something we should talk about or could talk about, or don't you think it's appropriate?
I don't believe that it's inappropriate. Do they know what have the districts been laid out yet?
Not yet.
I don't think they really know what's going on with that.
Yeah, they were supposed to have a committee, get an agreement, and blah 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 blah, and they haven't done anything yet. So, yeah, you're right, though, Mike. Yeah, some of them maybe in other areas, or take in other areas than they currently have right now. So,
but they're going to have to get on that, aren't they?
Yes, Robert, you think?
Somebody's going to have to print some ink on ballots, you know, at some point.
But it also bubbles up to the House of Representatives. They're going to be different districts too, you know, different localities. So, yeah, Robert, everything on paper should have been accomplished by now, but nothing's been done yet.
I mean, I think New York itself loses one.
We do.
United States House seat.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And again, with the population shift with the Senate and the Assembly in House, there's going to be some definitely, some changes, so.
Okay, so if everybody's fine about the format, the next thing is to go through. So what I did, I'm just going to share a screen here. And what I did is, can everybody see my screen now?
All we can see is your Word documents in time with the little folders.
Oh, okay, hold on. So I must have shared the wrong one. Stop share.
Yeah, hopefully it's not like that Canadian legislator that shared the one with his bride.
Yeah, I can imagine what that did.
It caused.
How about now?
Yes, yeah, we got it.
Okay, so what I did basically is on the left side is our position paper. And then I went back in and looked at questions from last year, and those questions, if they made sense, I put them on the right-hand column. So one of the points in our position paper is commit to a 3-year phase-in of an updated foundation formula. And then just to get things started, this was the question that somebody asked last year. Foundation Day was predicated on the campaign for fiscal equity, blah, 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 that stuff. So who would, do we want to just people speak up and say, I'll ask a question about this particular issue? And if not, I'll see if I can reach out and get, let's go through the position paper first and see, review those things. And then we can roll back and see if people say this is something that is interesting for my school district. So the first point was about the foundation formula, equitable, consistent, and predictable. Second issue was broadband capacity being available. The third issue was raise the salary cap on the aidable portion of BOCES itinerant personnel. I think some of these we're moving forward on. And then revise the tax cap levy limit. And then we can either break those out and people can ask about specific issues, or however we want to do that. Eliminate the supermajority vote, allow for a minimum base of 2% for the levy increase, exclude additional financial school safety issues, include pilot properties, make the starting point for tax cap calculations, the allowable levy growth, a true 2%, and then extend to 3 years of carryover provision. Another one was include properties covered by payments in lieu of taxes, pilots. Then the next point was propose and support legislation that'll change the burden of proof for CFE litigation. I hope after the last meeting, everybody got a copy of Brian's paper, Brian from New Hartford. So, and I did see NYSBA had some points in about this. They're picking this up now. Next point was allow combinations of school districts or BOCES to establish regional high schools. Next point was allow schools to maintain an unrestricted fund balance of up to 8%. Next one was allow schools to decline to have their buildings designated as polling locations. So anybody that that's a problem for, speak up. Authorize schools to hold instructional days during the last 2 weeks of August. Next one was hold small schools to the same debt limit regulations as other school districts. I'll volunteer and take this one because this is a $50 million impact for VVS in terms of what our debt limit is. Currently, our debt limit is $17 million, but if we were allowed to increase it to 10% of the most recent valuation and to exclude the state aid payments, we'd be able to increase it to $72 million. So it's something like a $56 million. It's a pretty big change for us. And then we get state aid on that and we're talking about going into a building. Supposedly there is a small schools consortium up at NYSBA. I haven't been able to contact Jim. Is there anybody in NYSBA that I can contact that would, it's one of these consortiums. Do you know who I'd contact?
Yeah, you know what? Let's go Barry. I mean, Barry's got roots here, down in Mohawk. So Barry Entwistle.
Okay,
Tom.
call Barry about that.
Yeah. I mean, he can point in the right direction. That's for sure.
Okay.
That issue is also affecting Herkimer BOCES because Little Falls has got the same problem. They're
Yes.
up against, they're a small city and they're
Okay.
up against their debt limit, and we're trying to do a building project.
And they're a small city too, so yeah.
Small city.
Tom, does that affect you because of Cheryl? Is that why?
Well, we're a small city schools. We're designated as that. There's a couple of different categories of school districts. And so us and Oneida and Rome, and there's a number of them in this area that are considered to be small city schools. So for example, when I run for the board, I have to get 100 signatures.
Right.
There's some other things that are different about small city schools. And this is just one of the ones that doesn't work in our favor. And so just kind of saying, let's hold small city schools to the same regulations as everybody else. There's no reason, I haven't found any reason why we would only be able to do 5% of our debt limit instead of 10% and not offset bond payments.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll do that one. Next one was superintendents should be allowed to hire certified teachers to teach outside their certification field. Some of the smaller school districts, I'm sure that's a pretty big one.
I think after this year, Tom, every superintendent would want to take that one. It's been,
Yeah.
trained.
I would take that one if nobody else wants it. Being a little school, that's something that could, really affect us.
And the other problem, Tom, is that, again, people use now your school, like it's almost like, Catholic schools, they come in for 2 or 3 years, get their experience, and then they go to a better paying district. So,
Right.
Yep. Okay, the creation of charter schools should not be at the expense of existing school districts. Fund charter schools from their own aid. And then, so that's all of our position paper. There's nothing else on the left-hand side. And then these are some questions that we asked last year that didn't make it into our position paper. But I think there's still issues. Farm to table programs. I don't know where that program is at all right now. I don't know if they're continuing with that. What's our old friend? What's your position on unfunded mandates and our relevant mandate relief? Would you?
hey, Tom, can you go back up to 11? Russ will take that one.
Russ?
Yeah.
I know there's some movement in that. We just talked about that the other night at our Richfield board meeting, because our FFA is looking to grow some things. And I know they've been talking with the BOCES that does all the food.
Prep.
And so there has been some discussion on that just within the last month or two.
I think in the governor's state of the state, she did mention that there'd be an increase in that funding for the farm to table.
Good. Well, I know you're right, Jim. Russ has always been very up on this. And so I wouldn't be surprised that he'd be interested in saying something about that. Okay, unfunded mandates. Would you be in favor of eliminating competitive grant money? Was one of the questions we asked last year. Currently, many school districts in the Mohawk Valley have this was the medical care issue. And I think this one has been resolved. Am I correct on that?
Well, I think it's out to what, 2025 now? They pushed it out a few years.
They
Does that
did.
sound right?
Yeah, they did, Robert. Yeah, they still won't make it permanent, but you're right. They've pushed it out more than a year.
So I think that's probably, even if we got rid of that one for now, I think that's fine. They're not going to do anything with it. And I kind of agree with getting rid of the next one up, because I don't think this governor is going to put anything else out beyond number 6.
Number six, Tom.
Yeah.
Number 6. That was Cuomo's baby, where he would have all that slush money to work with.
Well, and I think, that and trying to put stuff over and basically limit it by coming through BOCES, all this extra stuff you wanted to stick under the more controlled umbrella. I just can't picture this governor doing that in the time frame that she's going with here. I mean, this whole budget has got to be entirely new to her. I'm guessing not only wasn't she in the room before, she might not have been in the same zip code. No offense to her, but it was, I think, an all boys club, and it was a small club.
Absolutely.
Well, and for the first time in a lot of years, there seems to be some money there where, we're not up against, big state deficits. So it's gonna be a little bit easier to do some things budget-wise.
Well, you might have one of the first times in a long time where there might be some open ears that were not there before.
Yeah,
And hopefully, Robert, that's with the tax cap. I mean, you know, that was Cuomo's baby from day one. And he was always, you know, never going to change. So hopefully, if we're going to get some traction, this is the year to try to do it.
Tom, I would said I would also take the one with getting the hotspots and computers. Out here in the rural areas, we're having some real problems with internet. So if you have nobody that wants to do that one, I would do that also.
Now, just to kind of, there is some money available to help students. I did a little bit of research on this, and there is apparently some money available to help students get broadband access. I know that doesn't help if there's no, you know,
Equipment.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
that's our problem there. We've got people that are just, you know, there's no service. We had
Right.
40 families a year ago in Richfield that didn't have service. I mean, we got people around here that barely have a cell phone
Yeah.
service.
So
You know, they gotta
I'll
go
make-
to the end of the road.
Yeah, I'll make sure and send you. Doug Guston talked to the Mohawk Rick, and they did a survey, and they had some figures on who didn't have broadband access in Herkimer BOCES, Oneida BOCES, and Madison BOCES.
ODY also had quite a problem.
Yeah, I will say that theirs was not the vast majority of people, according to their survey, had broadband access. So, you know, I don't know if the legislators have got that information. My understanding is there was some sort of studying being done about that, about exactly how few students had access to broadband.
I know they're working on it up here because the road our farm is on is about 2 miles long. They came in about a quarter mile on each end of the road. And we have a couple of families of school kids in the middle of the road that didn't have good service.
Yeah.
I'll see if that's gotten better over the last couple of weeks too.
Yeah, the other issue I found was that when they talk about broadband access downstate, it's a very different issue than broadband access upstate. And we need to make that clear that
Right.
broadband access downstate is a financial issue, simply that people can't afford it.
Right.
And you're right. And I think the last time we talked to, Brian Miller was very aware of that. He can't get access up to his camp, and there were some other people that, you know, were certainly acutely and aware of that issue, but something we need to bring up again. Okay.
I take the one for the itinerants.
Is that Steve?
Yes, it's Steve, yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure who was saying that. Let's see.
Up toward the top.
Yeah, it was one of the first ones.
Was it up on top?
Yep.
Yeah, this
The
one right
third
here.
one down. Yep.
Yep.
Hey, Steve, I will get the latest. Remember 2 years ago, it went all the way to the governor, but he never signed it. But I will get Brian Miller and find out what the status is, and get the Assembly bill and get the Senate bill for you, okay?
That'd be very helpful. Thank you, Jim.
And then last year with everything going on, it just, you know, it wasn't even.
I think that was one of the last things on his desk, wasn't it? When
It
he-
was, Robert, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, and he just, you know, again, but then they have to bring it back. If they bring it back, I think it's 3 times, you know, but I will find out where we are, all right? Steven?
Yeah, I thought I saw something about increasing that to 60,000 over 3 years.
It is, Tom, but I mean, again, let me get, you know, I'll talk to Brian and see where we are with it, whether it has to start all over again or whether they can just pick it up from the end line.
Okay. The big one, of course, is foundation aid. Anybody have any whatchamacallit?
I wish I knew if Bob Miller were going to be there. I think he's one that I know in our area knows an awful lot about this stuff.
Who's that, Robert?
Bob Miller from Herkimer.
Herkimer.
Well, you know what, Robert? Yeah, let me let me make sure, let me give Robert a call, okay? And see if he can just, it's from Zoom, so he can do it from his garage, you know?
I mean, I'm not looking to stuff him under the bus, but he's
No, no.
spoken on this issue several times before, and he's
Yeah.
extremely knowledgeable about it.
He's getting
If I
ready to
were-
retire, so he's probably doesn't worry about being under the bus.
I
Here's
think the governor
He's-
mentioned this in her in her State of the State speech, that she was gonna go follow through on this. I thought I remember reading.
Yeah, I didn't
I
read
heard
it.
that part, yeah.
hey, Tom, and here's the group, okay, you know, I talked to Brian Fessler down at NISBA, and, you know, they're talking about the adjustments to the foundation aid that we're talking about now. You know, the first one is review and adjust the weighting of high need students. Because right now, you know, there's a certain weighting for them. Right now, I believe it's 16%. So, you know, and I know that those kids cost a lot more than 16% in your programs. The second piece is improved data collection, what we've talked about for measuring student poverty. Because if again, remember, the original data was from 2000 census. Update the regional cost index, which, you know, again, downstate has a little bit higher than we do. Review impact of student-based district wealth factors, which we've always talked about, the combined wealth ratio. Account for the property tax cap in a district expected local contribution. When the foundation aid formula was enacted in 2007, a central component was the measure of how much the local community should be expected to cover of the total cost of educating a student based on resources in that community. That figure would then be subject to subtracted from the total educational cost to determine the state's portion. That's foundation aid per pupil. The local contribution would theoretically be generated through the local property tax levy or other local tax streams. Since then, the state enacted a property tax cap that places additional limits on the district's ability to generate revenue at the local level. Therefore, the expected minimum local contribution calculation should be reconsidered to recognize the fact that a district may not be able to realize the full amount, which you can't. I mean, everybody's so afraid of going above your cap, and sometimes not even to your cap, so.
Well, there's also an issue of, I don't know what information was garnered about 2020 census. I mean, I think they had to put a stop just as counting began as COVID came around. So you might even have to go back to 2016 numbers, but still you're a decade ahead of where you were. And then you can at least focus your argument on one or two of the numbers instead of all 7 or 8 of what they're basing that on.
Yeah, right, Robert. Yeah, I mean, anything above 2000 is going to be a step in the right direction.
Especially for our, some of our little schools now, like Richfield has seen a tremendous decrease in enrollment. We are one of those schools that's considered wealthy because we got a lake. And we have a real high portion of high need students. Everything in that old formula is just right against us.
Right.
And, if you're a held harmless school and then they go to this, where are we going to be? We could end up hurting.
I have that same concern, Tom. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
I'm scared to death sometimes of this foundation aid, going true to the formula. It could really hurt some of our schools that have seen some really big changes in 20 years, 22 years. And actually, the 2000 data is looking backwards. We're looking at 25-year-old information on some of this stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know I asked when the last time Brian Fessler met with us, I asked him, is there some sort of approach that makes sense, that's also fair to districts like upstate districts that have been losing students and have some special circumstances? And he said there wasn't, like, that you can't say that this is, we've got the Miller approach and we've got the Shipsky approach and we got the Moats approach. It's just not that. Everybody's, it's very fluid right now, I guess. but I'm really concerned that we need to get our voice in there while these things are being formulated to make sure that they understand that, like you said, you've got, you're not a low wealth district?
No, we got the lake.
Yeah,
We're
so
one
that
of those
drives everything up.
communities that has,
Yeah.
we've got people in town making $15,000 a year living in a $40,000 house, and people with a $250,000 camp on the lake. We have half of the number of students enrolled that we had probably 20, 25 years ago. Just the sheer numbers, but it still costs us the same amount to keep that building going. And sadly, I think the percentage of students that we have that are high needs is that percentage is probably higher because that's the population of people that are still here. It's, we're right up against a lot of factors there that should the foundation aid, the Save Harmless go away, I don't know where we would be.
Yeah. And we have some new people here tonight, just so everybody knows. I mean, if Bob Miller does take this, that doesn't mean that Tom Shipsky isn't invited to chime in and say, here's what's going on for Richfield Springs, here's what's going on for VVS. It's important that we all lend a voice, especially to something as important as foundation aid.
And if Bob won't take that, I guess I will.
And if you do have data to back it up, that's even better.
Yeah.
But I would prefer Bob do it. But if need be, I'd be willing to do that because I'm afraid we could be terribly affected.
Well, yeah, I mean, Doug isn't here. I'm not sure. I thought he was coming tonight, but that we've got a couple people that aren't here that I'm sure I can make a phone call to and would be willing to take some of these questions.
When is Bob Miller retiring?
I think the end of the year, whatever. I know I think Sandy said they're already going to get started with a superintendent search there.
I thought I thought they'd chosen an interim already. I thought.
I think they've.
I think he was done or is done right along.
Oh, is he really? Okay, I don't know. But he still may be willing to jump in and help us. I don't know.
I can see about that. Okay. How about tax cap levy limit? Anybody want to jump in and come up with a question about that? Or maybe even a couple people for that. Eliminate the supermajority vote. Has anybody tried that? I mean, I know we've gotten a supermajority vote, but we haven't asked. The one time we asked for a supermajority vote, that was 7-8 years ago. We didn't get the 60%.
I think we did last year. I think we needed it. We were just over last year.
You got it?
Yeah.
You know what, Tom, I think in this region, Brookfield lost the first one, but they got the second one. So that's the only good news is that, when backed up against the wall, the communities have supported the districts in this region. Downstate's a different story.
Yeah,
but it would be it's a concept. There's not another election in the freaking state that has a limit to it. It's 50+1. I don't care if you're talking judges, assembly, senate, town council, city council. That's what an election is. It's 50+1.
And again, that was a Como thing, and maybe there's some traction to change that now.
Hey, Tom, we've got a bunch of, proposals there. If we can't find people tonight, like you said, Tom, we can make some calls, all right, and give people different segments of it because they're all solid, and like, again, if we put this against the wall, maybe we get one of them,
Okay.
I know that negative tax rate is, you got killed on that, right, Robert and Tom, didn't you?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah, we did.
You had to have a majority vote on a freaking tax decrease.
Yeah.
Yeah, we paid cash for a building project and it pushed us negative.
Yeah,
Robert,
we don't have any pilot stuff with us. We have one that I think we've been screwing around with for a power plant, but you're never going to get any traction on that.
Okay. All right. But somebody else besides Richfield had a negative, they had to have a majority vote for a tax decrease, which is,
Crazy.
But people were in favor of a negative.
yeah.
You know, I'm surprised that didn't catch on, actually. Yeah. Let's vote for this and our taxes will go down by voting for it. Kind of weird. Okay, I think you're right. I think we can reach out to people. How about the CSE litigation?
That's a biggie.
Is that Madison or Morrisville? Where was that?
Well, that's in Whitesboro, or New Hartford, I'm sorry.
But and Madison too,
Yeah,
Tom.
Morrisville and Hamilton. Yeah, they've gotten hammered with it quite a bit. I know.
It sounds like, did Mike Head talked about that one of the last meetings, didn't he?
Yeah,
Well,
Brian Belair from Whitesboro he did the position paper on
Yeah,
it.
that was very well written.
Yeah,
I bet we can get Mike Head to do that.
yeah,
I'm just going to put him in.
yeah. That'll teach him to miss a meeting.
That's right. Okay, regional high schools and authorize BOCES to issue a diploma. I think it'd be great if we had somebody from one of the BOCES, you know, to be able to ask that, one of the BOCES board members. Do BOCES want to be able to do that? I mean, I know we talked about this a long time ago, and it's just kind of, it evaporated, you know, 15 years ago, and I don't know.
I'm very much in favor of it because, you know, our little schools need to do something to offer more. I've got a meeting, BOCES, Herkimer BOCES meets Thursday night. I might be able to see if I can get somebody else who's willing to jump in with us on some of this and see if anybody will take some of these. I don't want to be the only person talking here. I don't want a target on my back.
This actually came up many years ago when I still lived in the North Country in St. Lawrence County. And it seems that legislatively, at least at that time, there was support from both the Senate and the Assembly. The funny thing is, there was not much support from the community. So I'm basing that on the North Country. I don't know what it's like in this area because I've never seen it really proposed in this area.
I think the community is always going to be skeptical of this, just like a merger. Nobody wants to lose their identity. The way I've seen some of these put together is your kids would still graduate from your own school, but they would have the option of going to a, you know, especially like if BOCES could offer, you know, diplomas or whatever. Some of our kids, you know, like right now, they belong to the CTE, they graduate from there, but they still walk the stage in Richfield. They're still our student. I think, you know, depending on how you structure this, you can get around some of that local hesitation to lose your identity.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think it's a great idea because I know small schools are great and, you know, they produce great students, but at the same time, a regional school could present actually more opportunities for students. So I actually think it's a great idea. I was just surprised in the North Country when it got shot down as big as it did.
Joe, I suspect you're right that many people, at least in the VBS community, would not be in favor of shipping our kids over to BOCES full day. I mean, we support the CTE program, but I also wonder, I mean, Madison and BOCES has an alternative education program. I believe Herkimer and Oneida does too. So I don't see what the problem would be with BOCES authorizing a diploma for those alt-ed kids, and then they can just expand it from there. Is this a legislative issue, or is this a Department of Education issue that doesn't allow BOCES to issue a diploma? Does anybody know?
I think it's a DOE, Tom, but it needs legislative approval.
From what I've gathered on it, it does, you know, because for little schools like Richfield, you know, we got 28 kids graduating. When we're teaching physics, with a, an online course because, we got 2 kids to take physics. What are we doing to those kids? One of our students just went to work for NASA, sending a rocket to the moon. Exceptional student, but he had to take a lot of things online just to be able to get into college where he wanted to go to get into these programs. And, where personally, I think we're doing an awful lot, for the lower end of the students, which, we very much need to. And we're leaving our upper students in these little schools to kind of get it on their own. And a regional school would, I think, hopefully let us do more for those kids.
Thank you, because that was our exact situation, that we're doing a lot, and as we should be, for students that have problems. We do have some very gifted students, and regional high schools, I think, or this plan would really enhance their opportunities and their access. So.
Well, a couple of years ago, there was a student from Herkimer County that didn't get into Geneseo. She was a valedictorian of the class, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So because she didn't have the program that the other kids had.
Yeah, had the marks, but didn't have the program.
Right.
Yes.
I have a sense that there'd be a much more support for sharing rather than a regional high school. So I know at VVS, we've talked about having other students from local schools come to VVS for our FFA, for our ag science program. So a sharing kind of thing. I can't imagine, Tom, with the community, if you only have 28 students, do you really want to give some of those students up to a regional high school? All of a sudden you're only walking 10 kids across.
I don't know that we would be giving them up, but if we can do something jointly, you take Richfield and ODY, we're already doing all our joint sports because it's the only way we can put out a girls basketball team and things like that. Look at the problems they're having down at Worcester and Skenebus. Those schools are close together. They just voted down a merger, but I mean, they're, financially they're hurting, and program wise they're hurting. Really, what is our main goal? Our main goal is to educate our students. It's, I don't know that it's to keep the people in the community happy, although they got to vote for it. But, our real goal is give our students the best education we can.
Well, there's 3 different options here. Regional high schools allow BOCES to issue diplomas, and then regional partnerships. I think those are 3 distinct approaches.
Here's one of the things though, Tom, and first of all, let me say it was a great article in the paper, very well spoken, a lot of nice things in there. One thing that caught my eye though is you said that Little Falls is sharing some ag class stuff with VVS.
Yeah.
How did that happen since you're jumping across BOCES lines? Not that it can't happen, but it doesn't happen often.
Yeah, we haven't exchanged students. It's more program assets and helping them with curriculum and that kind of stuff. We don't have any Little Falls students coming over to us.
So this isn't even virtual. It's just helping them perhaps with the curriculum. So,
yeah, we've had Westmoreland students come to FFA before. Come to VVS before actually physically attend, and that was cross contract from Oneida BOCES, but we're not sharing students at all from Little Falls.
Okay, but that's one of the things that we talk about of sharing that I don't think is it's not an easy task to get. And Russ has spoken about this many times. Myself, I'm not in favor of the regional high schools, but I can see where some schools in close proximity or even adjacent are a great fit to be able to do that. But Russ has mentioned before, but I've never seen a list, maybe one exists, of, he seems to think there are some statutes and some regulations from state ed that actually are boundaries from schools even talking about this. I don't know what those are, but he certainly was very adamant about being able to take down those boundaries to begin with, to even have some discussion about.
There are, because we have talked about that. And it's not to say that a regional high school couldn't be a virtual high school. That, we put it together out there, and then, we can send 4 kids that are, high science and different schools can send them in. They wouldn't leave our building necessarily. Right. Would, log on for maybe 3 classes at this virtual high school that's put together that, you know, your VVS teacher who's extremely good in advanced biology is teaching that. Somebody in Mount Markham has got a wonderful program, and they're merged together into, you know, maybe we've learned how to do a lot of things virtually in the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we can afford to build any more buildings.
Tom, what were your three questions? One was sharing, one was,
Well, one's a regional high school, one is authorizing BOCES to issue diplomas. And I'm not really sure what that, I mean, I know that BOCES is always very clear about, you know, these are VVS students, they're not our students. We're just there to service your students. So I, you know, but I don't see what the big deal is of having BOCES issue a diploma, especially for the kids that attend BOCES all day, you know, like the alt ed kids, for example.
Yeah.
And so I don't see what the big deal about that would be. But then the third would be a regional based partnerships. So, you know, teachers helping each other out, exchanging students of science, you know, if there's maybe a physics program that somebody else, that's the old distance learning model. I mean, from a long time ago. When
Right, that's what we call distance
Yeah.
learning. Yep.
that started out.
But one of the things you're going to have to get with that, with the sharing, is the ability to, you're going to have to get some state regulation in there that's going to supersede teacher contracts. Otherwise, you'll never get anything done. You're going to have to allow them to say, look, if there's 10 shares of a kid and we need to have one of those shares paid to Little Falls, we need to have another share paid to VVS for ag. You've got to do something like that. It's going to supersede what the teacher is going. A lot of these teachers' contracts is that, yeah, you can have a remote class, but I've got to have a certified teacher in the room overseeing that. That's not feasible at all. In a small school like Richfield, Owned Young, Remsen, Poland, that's just not going to serve us at all. You know,
Yeah,
you've gotta have
honestly,
something with a
Robert,
lot of teeth.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm not completely downplaying that. But when I started at BOCES 30 years ago, I did the distance learning program that was with the TV sets and stuff. So that was before the internet, really. And I know there was a lot of concern about the teacher contracts, and maybe part of it was we're going to turn a blind eye to it because everybody was trying to get it off the ground. There weren't a lot of classes, but honestly, that wasn't a problem. Teacher schedules, that wasn't a big problem. I mean, we were able to solve those issues because it was Morrisville and Stockbridge shared a lot of programs, and they were just very innovative in the ways that they came up with solving both of those two issues. It was, in my opinion, it was much more of a Stockbridge was able to provide classes for their kids. Morrisville was able to provide all the classes for their kids, and there wasn't a need for it. I believe that's changing. You know, as we're all cutting back, and as Jim says, we're not talking about right sizing, we're talking about keeping from capsizing. So, you know, maybe it's time to look at this again, and maybe there'll be more initiative to get this thing going. And teacher contracts are an issue.
I think you're always going to have the administrators and the guidance counselors want that initiative, but the teachers are going to be a tremendous hurdle with this because they're afraid to lose something. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. If you're gonna have that on the table, you've got to have something that trumps it, that overrides, because they'll grieve it. And
we're also facing now that we weren't before is a shortage of teachers.
Yeah,
I mean, in some of these curriculums, we just can't find anybody.
That's right.
And Robert, the key piece of that is a RIF. If you're going to RIF somebody, reduction in force, that's where they really get excited. You know, if you can offer, you know, kids programming and you're not going to reduce anybody, then they're much more amenable to that, you know. But you're right. If there's going to be a RIF, then, you know, they're going to pull all kinds of.
But we also know it's tough to justify, like Tom said, it's tough to justify, even if you could find a physics teacher.
Oh, yeah. For
and
two
kids. You want to
yeah.
offer it to,
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
10 kids
yeah.
or 2 kids.
Right.
That's tough to justify saying, okay, now I've got to have a whole slot for a teacher who
right.
just has to be in the room. They're not adding anything to the curriculum.
Right.
Realistically, they're adding supervision to kids who probably need to be minimally, if supervised at all.
Yeah.
It's just something that's gonna be tough to get over.
I gotta, this isn't gonna be politically correct, but I gotta say it anyway. So.
Welcome to the floor.
If someone was to say, I'm gonna authorize BOCES to issue a diploma, I don't think it's gonna fly. Unfortunately, I think there's still a stigma to say I've got a BOCES diploma compared to a New Hartford diploma or things like that. I think it'd be a hard sell. I'm sorry.
It's a sad thing that some of our small upstate BOCES don't have the same credibility like Cap District, where you've got a New Visions program, where you've got your top kids going to BOCES to shadow doctors, to shadow lawyers, to those types of things. You don't have that stigma, I don't think, in some of those high-end BOCES or those BOCES that are big enough to offer those types of programs. Yeah, here there is that feeling that, yep, Richfield sends their poor students down to BOCES to be welders and hairdressers and get them out of our building. We're not seen as a place to send our top-end students. And I don't know how we change that.
The regional program of excellence through Herkimer was superb. How many kids did you send down there, Tom?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, and for $1,200, I mean, let's also be honest. They basically had one person who coordinated it, and I'm not saying it was easy, but I don't think it was hard beyond the initial arm twisting to get somebody set up. All the burden was on the kids to get themselves there, do what they need to do, and get back.
Yeah.
I
agree in the general public that the general public has that view about BOCES. About BOCES. I would hope that school board members don't have that opinion about BOCES anymore. I mean, you have P-Tech programs, so we are sending more and more of our top-end kids to BOCES because we realize that they need those special programs. So I'm not sure who said that exactly. I definitely agree that that's, my neighbor. If I go to my neighbor, I tell him about all the opportunities in the engineering program up at BOCES and the graphics programs and the really top end programs that are up there. And they're, we didn't know that. Right? I live right down the street from it, and they go like, well, we didn't even know. Or when they have open house, people are walking around going, wow, these are like great opportunities for kids. But I do agree that,
with that. I don't disagree with that, Tom. All I'm saying is, we're trying to sell a product here that I think we need to educate people more. That's true. But I just feel, not that I'm not in favor of it, but I think it would be something hard in this area right now. That's my opinion.
Agreed. So I guess the question is, because it's getting close to, I'm not sure how long people can stick around. I don't know, do we have a consensus on this, or do we just present it to the legislators? We want something like this to happen. We see this as a way to help us with our resources. We see this as a way to help us with those, to provide more offerings to kids in a cost-effective manner. Is that the way we want to present this to the legislators?
Yes, and something that was just brought up as you were all talking, I would say somehow get into the question that as legislators and as elected officials, are you aware of what BOCES has become over the past 10 to 15 years or 20 years and the programs that BOCES offers? I don't want to sound cynical, but I wonder how many elected officials even realize how advanced BOCES has become.
That's a good point.
At Madison Oneida BOCES, we have a great allied health program. I'll tell you, my daughter is a physician assistant, and I'm proud to say a BOCES graduate. Also, there was just an article in the Observer Dispatch about the great auto body program from Madison Oneida BOCES with embedded students that are students in the automotive program that are getting certified as Ford techs, the engineering programs, everything. I have this discussion probably at least once or twice a week with somebody. And to be honest, I've talked to some elected officials, and somehow if we could get, when asking that question, try to find where they stand, I'm not sure our elected officials totally understand how advanced BOCES is these days.
Well, maybe this is something for the superintendents, that BOCES superintendents to, you know, we usually have them and to do a short presentation.
Perfect.
Do you think they'd be willing, one of them would be willing to do that, Jim?
I'm sure we can get somebody. Yeah.
I'm,
either Sandy,
I'm
Trish,
meeting
or-
with Sandy tomorrow or the next day. I'll talk to her about it.
Okay.
Maybe a starting point here is let's just find out what is the stumbling block. Is there a law or is there a, you know, a
Yeah.
Department of
a regulation.
a regulation?
If it's DOE or the legislators, and see where we can go from there. But I mean,
And
I
if we
think,
can just take that roadblock away and then we can chip away at this in the future.
and then also I'd like that, Joe, of giving our legislators a true taste of what BOCES is now compared to what they have in their heads from 20 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
It's not your father's
Our-
BOCES anymore.
Can I interrupt here a little second?
Yeah.
Our BOCES programs are going to becoming increasingly more important. I just watched a video of Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs guy.
Mhm.
He says over the next few years, for every 5 people that retire from the trades, we're only putting back in 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mhm.
So where you're still going to need people to fix pipes and wire
Yeah.
houses and do all those kinds of jobs, and we're not providing them. And he says, those people make good money and they don't need a 4-year degree. They can go
That's
right
right.
into the programs. He says, when you got 5 people retiring, you're only replacing with 2. That's, things are going to be pretty drastic here in a few years.
Yeah, well, they go into those apprenticeships, either carpentry, welding, electric, IBEW, Ron, there's no doubt about it. Those are going to be critical people because we're going to need them to keep our houses and going.
Masonry, tile, all that kind of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not going to have people that can build a building. I mean,
Yeah.
and now you got Governor Hochul wanting everything to go electric here in the next. We're going to be doing electric buses and our buildings are going to be heated with electric. And then when the power grid goes down like it did in Texas, everybody's pipes are going to freeze. I don't know, but that's what her big dreams are right now. So I think somebody needs to get a handle on that too. But
I figured up here recently that 18, 19-year-old kids starting in the carpenter's apprentice program, if they work the full year, will make more money than our kindergarten teacher with a master's starting out.
Easy. They're doing that now.
and have no debt.
No debt. They start
No
out at
college
18 years
debt.
old.
They're not leaving college with umpteen $100,000 worth of debt either. They're making money.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Russ and then reach out to the BOCES supers. Jim and I, we can talk about
And
this.
Tom, you're going to check with Sandy, right, Tom?
I will.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move on. Maintain an unrestricted fund balance of up to 8%. This would be a good year for that, I think, to push that as a no cost issue for them.
Yeah, especially with the federal money that people have still. So.
Yep. Anybody want to volunteer to take that? I mean, I think it's just basically a question. Were you in favor of doing?
I'll take that. I'll take that
I-
one, Tom.
Who is that? I can't see.
Robert, that was Robert.
Okay.
Now, Robert said he would take the polling, right, Robert? Do you want the polling or the 8%?
I'll take the 8%.
Okay, got
Okay.
it. Yeah, that's right. Poland's got all kinds of money up there. That's right.
We just took what Utica spilled.
Okay, then the next one is the polling locations. We don't, BVS, we don't, all our elections we don't have any elections on schools. Anybody?
This is Mike. I'll take that one.
Mike, okay.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah,
Yeah,
this
I
has become less of an issue, but it still is in a few smaller districts, so.
Our district has that, so they vote at school.
Is that Mike Ballard?
Mike Clements.
Clemens.
Yep.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, authorize schools to hold instructional days during the last 2 weeks of August, subject to collective bargaining. Did anybody know this make it into NISBA? In their position paper?
Let me see.
That sounds familiar, like when we had our last legislative meeting with them, this, I think was.
Yeah. I'm not sure, I forget exactly what this was. There was some specific stuff behind this. It just didn't come out of the blue. That with this week with the snow days and some other, and the new holiday, what's the new holiday?
Juneteenth.
Juneteenth, that, and then there were a couple of other things that came up, and that made it hard for us to get. There were some school districts that said it would be hard to get 180 days in without being able to hold something during the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, even if it was a couple of days of, general instruction, and here are the new regulations and laws to start the year, it's just basic training for the staff.
I can send some emails out and see if I can get somebody to do that. Charter schools. And this is one that, I think we need to say something about it, let them know that we're not in favor of it, but I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it. Anybody want to do charter schools?
Tom,
Yep.
I'm gonna try to get somebody from Utica, because that's who it really impacts, so, okay?
Well, I think we're done then. I think we got all the bases covered. Except for the tax cap.
Yeah, but like again, Tom, we can talk, I'm sure we can get, we can get people to address those, can you send this out to us, Tom?
I sure can.
Copy this? Thanks.
Yep.
Tom, this is Steve at New York Mills. If no one else to grab tax cap, I can do a little bit on it. I don't know if I want the whole question, but.
No.
Yeah.
Steve,
We'll find somebody. You got the salary cap one, Steve. That's a pretty important one. Let's see if I'll keep you in mind if I can't, but I'm pretty sure I can find, there are enough people that aren't here tonight that, we can reach out to them and get them to, I'll just tell them, hey, here's your question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything that they want to bring up that isn't listed here so far?
I think we got a pretty full night already.
And Tom, it matches right up with your, with our position paper, so.
Yep.
I think we're done. Nice
Sounds
job.
good. We're good then?
Yep. I think so.
All right. Well, everybody has time to go out and shovel their driveways before work tomorrow.